Hello! Another quick track guide, this time for Imola, which is where the Bongo people are going on Thursday. So hopefully there's some useful information in there for them, and also for anybody else that happens to stumble across this. I do hope there's something that you can hopefully learn a little bit of something from. If not, I'm sorry. But yeah, enjoy! Okay, here we go. Dull, boring, elongated pit exit to begin with. Extend, don't hit record till you're at the pits, maybe. Okay. So we're powering along here, full speed, top gear, or as close to top speed as you can get. You're going to cut to the left there and then drift over to the right. Now, as you can see, just at the end of this straight, there's a left-hand kink, so you don't want to be right the way over on the right as you normally would, because then if you brake in a straight line, you will simply drive off the track onto the grass, which is not ideal for anyone. So you need to angle your car slightly, so you're aiming roughly towards the middle of that outside curb over in the distance there. That should be a reasonable angle of attack, so to speak. So you're coming down here in 6th gear. Now you've got this little service road on the right. Roughly halfway between the service road and the beginning of the curb on the right there is where, in dry conditions, you want to brake. There's a little bit of kind of rough ground on the grass. You could use that as a marker, but it's quite hard to see when you're going very quick. So yeah, basically as soon as you've gone past the little service road, that's when I start to think about braking. Then you follow this trajectory, go down in this car from 6th gear, 5-4 down to 3rd. You can maybe put your right hand wheels on this curb as you're braking, but it does tend to suck you off slightly. Not in a nice way, unfortunately. But yeah, it just makes the car veer a little bit to the right. So down to 3rd gear, turn in here. Now this inside curb, you can use quite a lot of that up to where the sort of white chevron-y arrow things are on the green bit, but don't go over that little lip. Otherwise, first of all, it'll bounce your car all over the place and you'll get a track cut. So this first left-hander and the second right-hander, you want to sacrifice those if need be so that you can get a really good exit out of the third left-hander, the third part of the little chicane, because that's the one with the straight after it. That's the one where you want to be able to carry the speed. So cut across these. Lift, possibly a dab of brake. Shouldn't need to dab the brakes. Back over to the right, and from this point on, ideally be flat out. Full acceleration. Again, you can use this curb on the left here, and use all of the exit curb. Now along here, you'll get up to about, I think 4th gear. Now the way I do this is these two Goodyear signs on the right, or alternatively, I believe they correspond to the 100 and the 50 meter boards, is to brake halfway between the two, so essentially at the 75 meter board, if you imagine there was one there. Again, you can put your right wheels on the curb here. I'm in 4th gear at this point, and I just like a firm little application of brake, stab of brake almost, and then come off the brake, turn in, coast over this, again using all the chevron-y part of the curb. And as soon as you've gone over that and the car's stable again, you brake again. So it's brake, off the brakes, and then at this point back on the brakes, harder and longer, and down to 3rd gear, and then once again cut along this curb on the right here. Now it is, I think, possible to get back on the power briefly between the two, but in my experience that tends to make you struggle to slow down sufficiently to get the apex for this. And if you run, it's better for a stable, more consistent lap time, I think, to just brake, coast, brake. So yes, 3rd gear in this car, for me at least. Some people prefer 2nd here, and again, get as close to this curb as you can. And again, as you come out, you can use all of this exit curb up to about this point here. If you go over that, again, the car will start to want to steer off to the left, and you'll possibly get a track cut as well. So back over, drift over to the right, and then again, as soon as you've passed the little service road, that's where you want to brake. I go down to 2nd gear in this car. we go. Turning quite late, and you want to... I don't use the curb on the left because that tends to make the car start to bounce a little bit, and when you try and accelerate out, because the car is still bouncing slightly, you don't get very good traction, and particularly with the tyre model the way it is now, you need the good traction. So out of here, clip about this point. As soon as you can see the exit curb, that's when you start to kind of tighten your line slightly, clip the inside the apex, and then start to accelerate back out again. Right the way over to the right, and again you can use all of this curb, and obviously full power up the hill. Over the crest here. Now on the right there, just after the 50-meter board, there's a little patch of kind of where there's no grass on the ground. It's just sort of a sandy coloured mud, I suppose. That's the brake marker for me. So at that point I would brake from 4th, possibly 5th, down into 3rd gear. And here you need to make sure you turn in nice and early, because you can use all of this inside curb. And if you don't, you're compromising your speed and your exit. So use as much of that curb as you can. Get on the power as soon as you just come off the curb. Should be able to drift all the way out here in a nice smooth arc, keeping the power fully down. Then we go down here to a wonderfully tricky bit. So again, probably 4th gear, I think. Over to the left. Use the curb if you're confident doing so. At the end of the curb, you would just dab the brake, but I don't change down a gear. Just dab of brake, come off the brake, coast over this curb, straighten the wheel. As soon as you've got the car at a trajectory where straightening a straight line won't go off the road. So as soon as the car is sort of stable and travelling in a straight line, heading towards tarmac rather than going off, you brake hard down to 2nd gear. So again, it's brake, coast over the curb, and then on the brake again. Brake, off the brake, coast over the curb, and then on the brake again. Right down to 2nd gear. You can use the Italian flag curb, but the stuff on the left is a little bit bumpy and it makes it hard to get back across to turn in. You can cut the curb on the inside, again up to where the chevrons end, but be quite cautious here, because as you're getting to this point here, you want to start accelerating, but there's a little bump. If you pull on the throttle and you go over that bump, then the back of the car seems to take off a little bit, and you go into something of a slide. So ideally just use half throttle at that point, or alternatively wait until you feel the bump's quite obvious when you're driving. Wait until the car's gone over the bump before you start to accelerate fully. And then power up the hill. You should naturally be on the right hand side at that point, and then come back over to the left. I start to brake as soon as the curb begins here, and again put my left wheel on the curb. Now this right hand part of the chicane, you can cut this an awful lot. You can put your left hand wheels inside the white line, go over it pretty much like this, which allows you to have a better angle coming out here. You can use at this point here, bloody gears again. At this point here, you can put your left wheel on the sausage curb, but not to the left of it. If you do that, it will give you a track cut. So use that. Again, be cautious on the throttle because the car's bouncing around a lot at that point, so traction isn't as brilliant as it could be. Once you feel confident, put your foot down, do that potentially that two-stage throttle where you put your foot down partially just to sort of stabilize the car and put the weight to the back, and then with full power all the way down here. So at this point, try and get the car over to the left as near to this curb as you can. That allows you a nice smooth arc where the curb ends here. So as soon as you're pointing in a perfect straight line. You're on the right hand side of the track and you can brake with confidence. If you hug that right hand curb, then that will put you out into the middle of the road at this point, particularly if it's wet, which I believe it might be in this race. You don't want that really, because then you have to brake and turn over to the right at the same time, which makes things more difficult than they need to be. So try and make sure that you stay out to the left and then drift across to the right as you turn, and that just sets you up nicely for this corner. I think I've rolled down more than I want to. So basically, pretty much as soon as the car is straight, is when you start to brake, but the latest point is that DHL sign here, just before the 100-meter board. So all the way down, again, you can use the right-hand curb, all the way down to second gear. You can cut across this quite a lot. As soon as you come off the curb, you're back on the accelerator. Now here, if you look at this little curb, this is a very important corner, of course, because you've got a big, long straight after it. The chevron-y curb extension, if you want to call it that, on the right, where that ends, it ends in sort of an arrow point. Now, you can use that as a sort of arrow to tell you when to turn in to the next corner. So here, you just need a dab of brake, like a trail brake, into this, cut this nice and late, and from this point on, you should be full power, all the way out to the curb there. And that should give you a nice exit, which will, of course, see you right all the way down this straight. So I'll try and go around again, not full speed, but obviously a little bit quicker. So 6 gear, looking for the little service road. 5, 4, 3. My tyres have cooled down now, unfortunately, from going slow. Try and keep full power now. Cut this. Up to 5th. Down to 4th gear. Coast across there, down to 3rd. Back on the power, looking for the service road. Down to 2nd. Looking for the little bit of dirt, down to 3rd gear. And the power, up to 4th gear. Dab a brake, coast across here. Down 3rd, 2nd. There's the little bump, and then back on the power again, up the hill. Ignore that track limits, it's just nonsense. Another dab of brake in between the two parts of the chicane there. So again, like all the sort of chicane type corners on this track, it's brake, come off the brake, brake again. Like a 2-stage braking. And again, like with the other videos, always remember to try and move the steering wheel as little as possible, do everything as smoothly as possible, and remember to look where you want to go. Like at this point, looking for the braking point. As soon as I see that, I'm looking at the apex, and looking for the next apex, then the next apex, and then as soon as you've turned into that, you're looking for the exit of the corner, and that way your brain just kind of, in theory anyway, pieces everything together and makes your line as smooth as possible, which is important all the time, but particularly important if you're going to be driving in the rain with potentially not the perfect tyres for the situation. Again, looking for my brake marker. There it is, brake, look to the apex, turn in, looking for the exit. And it just gives you a nice smooth line. Brake, off the brake, brake, down to 2nd, over the bump, power. And yeah, that's the basics of it. Into the apex, and then to the other one, and the exit. You find it's far less likely to spin getting back on the power if you're looking at the exit of the corner, because as you're applying the power, because you can see the exit is a distance away from you, you will naturally start to unwind the steering lock, which means that you're far less likely for the back to go into a slide or a spin, because as you apply power, the lock needs to be coming off. If you're trying to apply power and then do this, it just sends you into a slide, particularly with this new tyre model. So everything smooth, everything as minimal as possible, and then get that rhythm, and then hopefully the speed will come afterwards. So yeah, there we go. Thank you. Okay, I'll just try a wet lap or two, see what the differences are in driving. It's just about as wet as it'll get in the race. Obviously the race will be at night, but it's difficult to see everything, so again, want to brake at the service road in the rain. Just give yourself a little bit of time to play with. And then again, in between the right and left sections, you will definitely need to lift in the rain and just do everything smoothly. Just less aggression, less full-on power. Just do everything as gently as you can. So here we brake at the service road rather than after it. It's a little bit too aggressive with the power there. I'm on wet tyres, but just feeling for the grip and the force feedback to tell you when you've got the traction. That's very difficult there. The second phase of braking for that corner now. The back tends to want to overtake, so it's doubly important that you make sure you're going in a straight line before you go on the brakes there. If need be, brake a little bit more for the first part of the corner and sacrifice that, because the stability is what you need going into the second part before the upwards right-hander. So I'll just try and go a little bit quicker. I do apologise, I find it very difficult to talk and drive at the same time, so please bear with me. Still do this flat, I think. Yeah. I hope it's just coming across everything's just a lot more tentative. I'm hitting the bloody limiter, that's my own stupid fault.
Lap 2:06.56.
Just before the service road will brake. Try second gear, nice and smooth into there. Oh, just about okay. But yeah, basically all of the braking points are just a car length sooner. Or at least that's how it feels to me. But just before you get to the curve now. Be very, very patient getting back on the accelerator there, because in the wet and with the bouncing from the curb, there's very, very little traction at the back until everything's kind of settled down and stabilized itself. So it's not too bad in the wet. It's just a case of doing everything even more smoothly, even more patiently, really. Be patient getting back on the accelerator. Make sure you brake nice and early for all of the corners. And yeah, just do your best. So I'll put a quick fast lap on at the end, or fast-ish, and yeah, hope there's some helpful stuff in here. And thank you very much for watching.
144.49.